Go live life. Go love somebody. Go talk to somebody. I think you'd be I think you'd be very shocked at how nice people really are. Welcome back, Move Podcast, motivating others virtually every day. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. It's a beautiful Monday morning down here in sunny South Florida. I think it's 73 outside right now. Thoughts and prayers have been to everybody else in the United States. It looks like everybody's going through a severe cold spell with some people experiencing a significant amount of snow. So hopefully everybody's staying warm, staying safe. Saw a lot of schools canceled, things like that. So please take care of yourself, take care of your families. But it is beautiful down here. It is paradise down here. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. It was an awesome weekend. If you're a sports fan, the UFC first card of the year, did not disappoint. Patty and Gaethje went at it. It was an all-out war in the octagon. It was awesome. And then both those football games yesterday were both good games for different reasons. We had a defensive battle / snowstorm blizzard that really slowed down that AFC Championship game. It was kind of just a slugfest there. But then there was a lot of offense, a lot of scoring in the late game between the Seahawks and the Rams, and we got a rematch of Super Bowl 49 coming up for you guys. We got Seahawks versus the Patriots, so we'll see what happens there. Moving on, the first thing I want to address, it's the elephant in the room. I don't. It sucks that when I started thinking about a podcast, and I was like, I can do current events, and I can relate current events with maybe a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of knowledge, some things that I've learned. And I don't know why, but ever since I've started, my third day in, Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And ever since then, it's just been nonstop. And so, over the weekend, Mr. Pretty was killed by ICE agents in Minnesota. Another person's life lost there in Minnesota, and it's a tragedy. It's tragic, and I'm not speaking on a liberal side or a conservative side. I am speaking right in the middle of the aisle. It's a damn shame. The whole situation is just a damn shame. But I do want to clear up some things. The governor of Minnesota, Mr. Tim Walz, made a statement telling Trump to get his untrained agents out of Minnesota. And I wanted to, and I don't, why do we have people in the position of power that just bold-faced lie? Because then that circulates, and in reality, these ICE agents are actually extensively trained. They're training facilities in Georgia, and they go through a rigorous training before they're ever able to get out into a community. So, I'm not saying what they did was right, wrong, or indifferent, but to act like these people aren't trained is just that's a made-up lie. That's just false. And, just because you don't agree with ICE doesn't mean you need to make up a lie about ICE. No different than just because you don't agree with the protesters, that doesn't mean you need to make up lies about the protesters. I saw just this morning that the National Guard in Minnesota is boots on the ground right now, and they were handing out coffee and donuts and things like that to the protesters. And I was talking to my wife over the weekend, and I was telling her, I said, I understand ICE is on a mission. I understand they have been tasked to do something, so they have a job to do. But maybe we're not going at it the right way. Maybe they don't have the right approach. Maybe we shouldn't be antagonizing people that are already upset. Okay, I don't think many people would disagree with, removing the undocumented citizens that are criminals. I don't think many people would disagree with that. I think a lot of people, I'm just, I don't know, I'm just assuming, which we know what that can do, but I'm assuming a lot of people slash most people would be, okay with removing the undocumented, illegal immigrants that have violent criminal records in this country. But is that all we're doing? Because that's what we're being told. But then you hear stories and reports of, them just going door to door and them just, yanking people out of cars and, out of restaurants. And it's like, that's not what we talked about, and I don't have all the answers. I'm not an expert. I'm not a law enforcement officer, never have been, never will be. I'm not an agent. This is just from my own civilian opinion for whatever that is worth. Maybe we don't have the right approach. Maybe people don't quite understand the reason why. And I think sometimes when things are explained, we get so upset and we let our emotions come out that we start saying things in the explanation that just fuels the fire on the other side. Instead of just sticking to the facts, sticking to what we're trying to accomplish or what they're trying to accomplish, and leaving it at that. But on the flip side of that, the protesters, just like, at the same time, you guys, if you're protesting, there are certain lines you just can't cross. And when you cross those lines, you put yourself in danger. And it doesn't matter if you're dealing with an ICE agent, a police officer, an FBI, it doesn't matter. When you start trying to get into a physical confrontation, you're physically blocking, then you start getting into a shoving match, a shouting match, like that's not going to go well. It doesn't, and it never has. Never in our society has that ever gone well for anybody that's ever attempted those things. So, we've also got to keep, yes, we have rights as citizens, but we also have lines in the sand that we've drawn with laws. And we can't cross those lines and then try to go back on, well, this is my constitutional right. No, it's your constitutional right to peacefully protest. But the moment that you start causing a scene and you start becoming violent, or you start making threats, or you start trying to rile up a crowd to do violent things, that's when you're crossing the line. You can't cross those lines. You can't give the other side ammunition. But on the flip side, though, back to the, in the agent's perspective, though, you guys can't be fueling the fire. You already know these people are upset. They're mad. Whether you agree or disagree with them, you have to have a general understanding that this is their state of mind. They're upset. They're angry. Some are confused. And, we've got to have a better understanding from both sides. And that's one of the beautiful things about this country is, we have these freedoms, but part of having freedom is you also have to have an understanding that not everybody's going to see it the way that you see it. And that's okay. You don't have to agree. You don't have to be for immigrants to like somebody. You don't have to be against immigrants to like somebody. Like people can be for them, and the other people can be against them, and you guys can still coexist. You don't have to be best friends. You don't have to go to dinner. You don't have to buy each other Christmas gifts, but you guys can coexist without being violent, without being hostile, without the confrontation. We are setting. I go back to the parents and the kids. We are setting a terrible example on how to handle issues. At the end of the day. At the end of the day, we have tragedy after tragedy. We have a killing after a killing, and it breaks my heart that this is where we're at. And Minnesota, it just seems like it's in shambles. It seems like it's just a mess, and I don't know. There's obviously, outside looking in, looks like there's been quite a bit of fraud. Millions and millions and millions of dollars, tax-paying dollars, were stolen and put elsewhere. And, part of me feels like, well, maybe this is kind of a cover up to not address that issue, because as soon as that issue came out, we had all the chaos. And I know one thing about, growing up and over the years that I've learned is our government and governors and congressmen and people like that, they're really good at precisely in a very timely fashion distracting you from what the real issue really is. They throw other stuff at you. In the past, it's been the LGBTQT movement, Black Lives Matter movement. They do these things, they highlight them, they put them right in your face, front and center, like it's a huge deal. And then on the backside, they're really covering something else. They're just keeping you distracted over here, so your eyes aren't over here. And I still kind of want to get to the bottom of what happened with these millions of dollars. What happened to this big ass building having all these businesses in it? Then we show up to the building and there's not a single business in it, and they're receiving X amount of dollars for this grant and this grant and this, and they're getting free money, and they're like, what are we doing? And so I want to know more about that, and I want to see less about this. But that's just my own opinion, for whatever that's worth. But at the end of the day, the whole thing in Minnesota, it's a tragedy. No matter how you slice it up, no matter what angle you're looking at it, it's a tragedy. And I'm not here to tell you the officer was right or, Mr. Pretty was right. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't even watched the video. I don't plan on watching the video. I don't enjoy seeing people get shot. I don't enjoy seeing violence. It's just not something I enjoy watching. I will let the people that we've elected, we've hired, that we've put our trust in to defend our Constitution and bring people to justice that need to be brought to justice. I'm going to rely on that to play out, and then kind of maybe go back and read the details, or of what the verdict was, or whatever the case may be. And but I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you who was right and who was wrong and what should have, could have, would have happened. I do think, honestly, just based on what I see, I think both are in the wrong. My own personal opinion. That's just, both were in the wrong and one person died, and that, to me, that is a complete tragedy. And so I hope they get it figured out. I hope people that, if there was indeed a crime, or something was unlawful, I hope it's addressed in the right, appropriate way, the way that it should be in this country, and people are brought to justice that should be brought to justice. It's just that simple. But I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you who's at fault and who's not. It's just not. I don't know. I don't know. But I do urge the people in Minnesota that are protesting to keep it peaceful. Make your point. Absolutely, come out by the thousands. Make your stand. Be seen. There's always strength in numbers. There's never strength in violence, because when you start inflicting violence, or you start grouping up or ganging up, you start losing all credibility. So if this is something that you're truly trying to accomplish, you're losing credibility when you start having these shootings and these killings. You can't have both. So if I'm in Minnesota and I'm a protester, I feel a type of way, and I'm taking the time out of my life, my busy schedule, to go freeze out in the freezing cold, to make a stand for something, I want to make sure I'm heard and I'm validated. And I'd be damned if somebody's out there acting like a fool, making me lose all credibility and wasting my time. That's how I would personally feel. So I just urge all of them to dial it back. And what I mean by that is less violence, less hostility. If you're on the ICE agent side, you're on the National Guard, whatever, let's have a better understanding of what these people are going through. Even whether I always think back to, this is probably a terrible example, but like the BTK thing, when the guy was arrested, he had kids and a wife, and their whole lives were flipped upside down, regardless of what that guy did. That was their husband, that was their father, and it takes time to process the fact that he's no longer going to be here. He's going to be somewhere else, and he's not going to be at our fingertips, so to speak. We're not going to be able to talk to him or see him whenever we want to. Obviously, what BTK did was completely horrendous and disgusting, and I think even his kids have been quoted with agreeing with those sentiments, but it doesn't take away that that's their dad. So I say that because it's like, whether you take a guy out of the United States or whatever that's had a violent criminal record, that guy still has a family that loves him and cares about him regardless of what happened. And it's not that we should let him go because of that, but we need to be a little bit more thoughtful when it comes to that. And it's the military is the military, but not everybody has that military mindset where it's just cutthroat. This is just what it is. Get over it. Okay, not everybody's wired that way. And in fact, I would also argue that very few people can handle life in that fashion. And so, we can't just have a whole unit that's operating that way to the general public. That's just not going to go well. As you can see, it's not going very well. We have to have more compassion, more heart, more care, more thoughtfulness, more intelligence. All the things combined. We got to have all of those things. And so that's my little spiel. I wanted to address it first thing, just because it's the elephant in the room. I hope and I pray for those in Minneapolis, whether you're in uniform, whether you're civilian, whether you're protesting. I just pray for peace. I pray that we can do things in a peaceful way, and we can accomplish things in a peaceful way, and we can stop with this violence. I think the worst kind of violence there is in this world is an American citizen versus an American citizen. That's just terrible violence. So that's all I have to say about that. Moving on. So one of the things my wife and I were talking about over the weekend, I was like, I should talk about that, because I do talk about it often with other people, and I've really failed to mention it on the podcast. And so it's when you have small-minded people, the problem, one of the biggest problems you run into with these people is they think the world revolves around them. They think everything is there about them, towards them, all these things. And that's that is such a toxic mindset. There is so much to this world. And I've had a few people, probably right around 10 or so. I haven't really counted, probably around 10, 12. So not an abundance, not hundreds, not thousands by any means. But I'll get messages, and they think that on my videos, like I'm referencing them or I'm talking about them. And it's like, no, I'm talking in general. I'm not going to come on here and specifically talk about a certain individual. Now, I may give an example, but the message I am sending is to everybody. It's not directed at a single person. And so that's, one of the things I say that because when you're finding your circle of friends and you're finding your professional network, it is mightily important, extremely important, that you weed these people out, because these people are always going to hold you back, because these people are always going to think that something was towards them or against them, and somebody owes them something, or they're up here and everybody else is down here. And those mentalities and those mindsets don't get you anywhere. And I've told you guys multiple times, you go to a table with my friends and start talking negative, you're going to be sitting by yourself. They're out. Okay? We don't have time for that. We're here to build something. We're here to build people up. We're here to encourage. We're here to love. We're here to laugh. We're here to have compassion, sympathy, empathy, all the things. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to be negative. We're not going to sit there and talk about somebody. But those types of people, I just call them narcissists, because that's one of the biggest narcissistic traits there is, in my opinion, is being very self-centered, to where you think the world revolves around you, to the point to where everything is about you, to you, towards you, whatever. And so it's we have to, you have to, as an individual, identify these people that are around you, and immediately you need to cut these people off, cut them out, just walk away. Don't even explain yourself. Just block the number, turn around, and walk away. That's my suggestion. But I'm also a little bit more cutthroat, right? I'm just going to cut you off. You can figure it out. You can add 1 + 1 somewhere down the line. I'm not going to sit here and explain it to you, because at the end of the day, it's just become confrontational. Because with these people, they never understand. They're always going to try to pin it against you. You're always going to be. They're going to play victim, always, and so you're always going to be the bad guy. And so you can just avoid all that and just say, I'm done, and walk away. But you can't be carrying these types of people with you. I talk a lot about mind, body, and spirit. Mind, body, and spirit can be extremely hard with somebody that's narcissistic sitting right by your side or sitting in your circle. It's going to be extremely hard. You gotta get away from all that negativity. You gotta have a clear headspace, a clear circle of friends, a clear lifestyle, and that's when this stuff starts clicking. And so I wanted to bring that point up. It's not something I've really talked about much, but it is an issue, and you see it often. I feel like narcissism is more common today than it probably ever has been, but I also think that stems back to the independence piece that I talked about, I don't even know, months ago. We push that independence. Now we're all independent to the point that we become self-centered, because we think we can do it all. We can order things without talking to anybody. We can fix things without talking to anybody. We don't have to do any communication. We got it. I got it. So it becomes that ego that we become narcissistic. And that's just my own opinion. I don't have any scientific research. That's just my own opinion. Kind of where that stems from is how we've been raised and how we've grown up in the society that we're currently in. And I think we've had a lot of negative impacts from technology and from the way that we're viewing things and viewing the world. And there are a lot of people in this world that view talking to somebody being a chore, being difficult. Just go talk to somebody. Just to go get out of their house and go see somebody seems overwhelming. That's the world that we live in now. And I think if you'd have told somebody that 100 years ago, back in 1926, I think they'd looked at you like you had 3 eyeballs and 4 legs. You know what I mean? Like they'd be like, what? But back then, you had to have social capital. You had to know a seamstress. You had to know a guy that could fix this and fix that. And whether you liked him or not, you had to keep a good working relationship with them at least, because they were the only person you knew. So it forced us, as being social beings that we are, that we've created to be, it forced you to have that intelligence and that understanding and that restraint. Even if you felt a certain way about somebody, if that's the only person you knew to do a certain task that you may need to get done at some point, or you do need to get done, it didn't matter. You kept that relationship kosher, professional, just to get through what you needed to get through. And I referenced it, and I'm bringing it back up. That's when all these clubs that sponsored all of my youth teams, the Lions Club and the Men's Club, stuff like that started way back then, because and to help people like myself or anybody else go meet people that had different skill sets. And you just give you a common area to meet, share ideas, and then, hey, Jimmy fixes this. Jimmy, I need some of this. I'm glad I know you. I'm glad I see you. When can you come over and take a look at it? And it gave you an avenue to go meet a few more handy people or knowledgeable people. And you could just meet them up, once a week, once a month, whatever the case may be, depending on the club. That's the whole reason the club started. The whole reason these clubs started. And we forgot that, and it's just kind of, and I don't even know how, I've never been in one of those clubs, so I don't even know how they operate. I'm sure they've changed quite a bit over the years. But that's how they originated, and that's why they originated. And so, but we've lost that. Back to my point, we've lost that. And I think a lot of that's led to a lot of narcissism, when I think that's why narcissism is at an all-time high. I don't have the answer to that. I can identify that it's a problem. I pray and I hope that, my wife and I aren't doing the same to our son. Hopefully, he doesn't see the world that way. I try really hard to make sure his ego stays in check, make sure he understands that, he's just one of 7 billion, and don't ever get too high on yourself, but don't ever get too low on yourself, and you stay right there in the middle, and just be realistic, be humble. And if you have a low, you need to learn to pick yourself up, and if you have a high, you need to learn to bring it back down. And it's just a matter of riding that center wave at all times. But yeah, that's all I really have today. It's just there's been a lot going on in my mind, and a lot with this Minnesota stuff, and I encourage you guys, don't engulf yourself in this stuff. Go live your life, okay? I understand things are chaotic. You may not agree, you may strongly disagree, but at the end of the day, you have a family, whether you have a wife, a spouse, a kid, a pet, someone counting on you, looking up to you. Go live life. Don't let this stuff. Don't sit around and stare at the news and listen to this expert and this officer and that. Just stop. Just stop. Turn off the TV. Go live life. I promise you, your neighbor is not near as evil as what the news will tell you they are. I promise you. I urge each and every one of you that are listening, hopefully this message sings loud and clear. Go live life. Go love somebody. Go talk to somebody. I think you'd be very shocked at how nice people really are when you're not just watching the news. Go talk to somebody that doesn't even speak English. I think you'll be surprised. And I hope we can open our hearts to more people and have more understanding and some intelligence. And I'm sick and tired of seeing this stuff. I'm tired of turning on the TV and trying to watch the evening news to figure out what the weather is and anything crazy being built, and all I see and hear is the chaos. We've got to get to a better point. So, anyways, that is all. Let's be better. We can do this. We've got this. Let's go live. Let's love each other. Let's be together. One nation, one country. Come on, we got this. And be disciplined. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. God bless. Thank you, guys.